is to inform, equip, and activate individuals to strengthen the moral foundations of our culture. Our goal is to be a leading organization in biblical worldview training for cultural transformation. We stand on the biblical truth that all human beings, including the unborn, are created in the image of God and are endowed by Him with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association.
Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues. That's the name of this program here on the American Family Radio Network on this Monday, July the 8th, 2024. Thanks for listening. We always thank you for listening to AFR. Again, Tim Wildman here with Ed Vitagliano. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Tim.
Fred Jackson.
Good morning, Tim.
We have got much to discuss today, which is a good thing because it's a talk show. And if we didn't, we would just play instrumental music, I guess, for the next hour, which is soothing sometimes. Just to do that.
Who doesn't like to be soothed?
But is that a verb?
Sure.
I guess it is, soothed. Just ED,
Yes.
right?
I was soothed.
I was
by
soothed by
the smell of the spaghetti sauce my wife was cooking in
Right.
the kitchen.
Said like a true Italian.
Just made that sentence
Yeah,
up.
that's good. On the
Use
fly.
the verb in a sentence.
On the fly. All right, Fred, what's the first news story?
Yeah, Hurricane Beryl came ashore on Texas this morning around Brownsville, Galveston area. They've been hit hard. Came ashore as a Category 1. So we're still talking pretty high winds here, 90 miles an hour. And right now, one of the impacts is in Houston, Texas, where the rain, up around, I guess, 6 o'clock this morning, they had already gotten 6 inches, and they're expecting another 7 inches in Houston, Texas. As some of the weather people were pointing out, you've got a lot of cement in the center part of that city. There's nowhere for the water to go but up. Thousands of people are without power right now. Now, it will subside in strength as this storm rolls along, and it'll become a tropical storm, a depression, et cetera, et cetera. And it'll move up towards this afternoon. Places like Tyler, Texas are going to feel the impact of this, but it'll become more of a rain event versus a wind event. But this morning along the shore, along Galveston, 90-mile-an-hour winds, like I say, lots of power out, and so bad time for the folks on the coast.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an article on CNN, which I've been looking at since the debate a couple of weeks ago. I'm just kidding.
CNN?
CNN. But this article is saying that the water level is so high, talking about in Houston, over 10 feet above its typical water level. That was just after 9 a.m. Part of the reason for it, this article is saying, is because of the high winds pushing so much seawater into that area. So it's not just the rain, but the surges that are helping to flood the area.
Yeah, low-lying area there. It's a bad day for the folks in Houston. And as you head north, like I say, Tyler, Texas, it's going to head up into parts of eastern Arkansas. Memphis, Tennessee is going to feel the impact of this later this week. But it'll be mostly a rain event by the time it hits those areas.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was looking at that. So it started out as a Category 5 hurricane out there in the Atlantic Ocean, and then it did have devastating effect on the island of Grenada, I think.
Yeah, Caymans, Jamaica, hard hit.
Hard hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
11 lives lost as it moved across that area of the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
Not Mediterranean.
But now flooding is the big thing.
Flooding is the big. It's packing a whole lot of water.
Yeah. All right. Next story.
Well, we have breaking news out of Washington at this hour. President Joe Biden has written a letter to Democrats in the House. It was released this morning and basically says, I'm staying on and let's cut out the party drama. It's got to end right now. So strongly worded, whether the president himself wrote it, probably not. But basically, he's saying we have 42 days to the Democratic convention and 119 days to the general election. He says in the letter, any weakening of resolve or lack of clarity about the task ahead only helps Trump and hurts us. It's time to come together, move forward as a unified party, and defeat Donald Trump, end quote. And he followed that letter up with apparently an interview with MSNBC's Morning Joe this morning, where he insisted that average Democrats want him to stay in the race and said he was frustrated by the calls from party officials for him to step down. Now, here's what he said. He says, those are big names, referring to those who think he should step down. Those are big names, but I don't care what those big names think. Now, in an Associated Press story this morning, some of those big names include Gerald Nadler of New York. I think most people are familiar with him. Apparently Adam Schiff and some others. But there's also people outside of the lawmakers, people like David Axelrod, former top advisor to Barack Obama. And I have to think when you hear Axelrod saying it's time for Biden to go, that he probably has the blessing of his former boss, Barack Obama, in this. So if Joe Biden thinks a 2-page letter to House Democrats is going to change things, I don't think it does.
All right. This is a mess. A mess of excuse, if you're in Great Britain listening to this is a royal mess. Okay. For the Democrats, which I'm not one. I'm going to come out right now and tell you. I know it's been a secret.
This is a shocking admission.
I don't vote Democrat. I can count on my hand the times in my life I voted Democrat, but it hadn't been for president. That's been a never.
Yeah.
But this is a royal mess, or as my wife would say, a hot mess. She often refers to our grandchildren as when they eat the 3-year-olds as a hot
mess.
As a hot mess. But there's a couple of things going on here. One is Joe Biden is his own boss. And guess who he answers to? Nobody. Okay? Nobody. I would say you have a Jill and Joe co-presidency right now. Jill Biden, she doesn't want him to go anywhere. She would be the only one, it seems to me, that, and I'm outside looking in, just guessing, not knowing all the family or party dynamics or White House dynamics, but it seems to me, and I think most people would agree with me, she's probably the only one who could convince him it's time to step down. And all indications are, by her words and deeds, she wants to remain First Lady, i.e. co-president, for the next 4 years. And she's not, to borrow from Joe Biden, he's not going anywhere. So, a couple of things here. I've heard people say, well, he's really the front man for a third term for Barack Obama. I might have believed that to be true one time, although I think his policies are to the left of Barack Obama. And we could go over that sometime. But I don't think Barack Obama controls Joe Biden. Joe Biden doesn't even have to take Barack Obama's phone call because Joe Biden is president, not Barack Obama. So number one is Barack Obama doesn't control Joe Biden, which is scary because nobody does. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
You see my point?
Yeah.
I kind of almost wish Barack Obama did control Joe Biden. Again, I'm looking at it as a conservative. I don't really care if they fall apart.
Right.
Or I don't care because that'd be good for the country. But so who, quote, does control Joe Biden? I think it's evident now, guys, that Jill Biden and maybe whoever is the chief of staff at the White House, who I don't even know their name. Does anybody know who's the chief of staff?
Yeah, the chief of staff. I'm getting that right now.
Yes, you do know.
Jeff Zients.
Jeff,
Yeah, good old Jeff.
good old Jeff. He's basically running the show over there. Now, I've also said that, and I mean, I'm serious about that. Whoever's the chief of staff at the White House, basically, besides the Bidens, that's who tells you what's going on, because they've given him the authority to do so. Now, the other thing here is that all these people, like some of the ones you've named, Fred. What's the old saying? If you're going to bring the king down, you better win. Huh?
Yeah, better not miss.
If you're going to bring the king down, you better not miss.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they're missing, and I don't know if Biden's inner circle is going to hold that against in some way. These other Democratic Party officials and big names, as Joe Biden called them, in the future. Maybe not. He really doesn't have time or the ability to think vindictively. Seems to me too much. So that's where I see this. He's staying in.
Yeah.
He's staying in, despite the fact people have been predicting he's dropping out. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, it seems like he is staying in, and here's the problem for the Democratic Party. Now, they went into full panic mode after that terrible debate performance by President Biden more than a week ago. And so they went into full panic mode. You have all these people coming out saying he needs to step down, providing fodder
Yes.
for GOP ads.
Bingo.
Trump ads and PAC ads as in the lead up to the general election, because you're going to have all these ads saying David Axelrod, former advisor to President Obama, says Biden is no longer able to function.
Yes.
He's, all this talk about incompetence, about his mental acuity. He's got to go. That provides cannon fodder for the general election. And so that's part of the mess that has developed around this candidacy.
Well, to your point, I saw an ad on Fox this morning, a Trump ad this morning, and guess what? It was cuts from the debate. The Associated Press this morning is still referring to, quote, his dismal performance at the debate. And if the Democrats thought this interview with George Stephanopoulos on Friday on ABC was going to help, it did not. It did not help the situation. Here's a little bit from that 22-minute interview that George Stephanopoulos did with the president, cut number 1.
You came home from Europe about 11 or 12 days before the debate, spent 6 days in Camp David. Why wasn't that enough rest time, enough recovery time?
Because I was sick. I was feeling terrible.
50 million Americans watched that debate. It seemed to confirm fears they already had.
Well, look, after that debate, I did 10 major events in a row, including till 2 o'clock in the morning after that debate. I did events in North Carolina. I did events in Georgia. Did events like this today. Large crowds, overwhelming response, no slipping. And so I just had a bad night. I don't know why.
Have you had the specific cognitive tests, and have you had a neurologist, a specialist, do an examination?
No one said I had to. No one said. They said I'm good.
Do you have the mental and physical capacity to do it for another 4 years?
I believe so. I wouldn't be running if I didn't think I did. Look, I'm running again because I think I understand best what has to be done to take this nation to a completely new level. We're on our way.
But are you being honest with yourself as well about your ability to defeat Donald Trump right now?
Yes.
I got to tell you, that may be the one issue that keeps Biden in the race above all others, and that is the hostility that he feels towards Donald Trump.
The feeling's mutual.
The feeling is mutual. But what I'm saying is, Biden, if people are going to try to convince him you can't beat Trump, and he can't stand Trump, listen, doesn't it just go to a person's soul when someone questions you can't defeat your worst political enemy?
Yeah.
and Biden thinks he can, and for him to step down is an admission. I don't have the right stuff to beat Donald Trump. Man, that's just going to grate on anybody's pride, and I think that might convince Joe Biden to stay in when nothing else can.
The other thing that we're seeing, though, is, the mainstream media protected Joe Biden now for the last 3.5 years.
Hypocritically.
Yes. So the debate happens, dismal performance, as the Associated Press says. But now Joe Biden does not have the mainstream media, the so-called legacy media, in his pocket anymore.
Right.
I mean, here we are almost 10 days since that debate. The Associated Press is still referring to the dismal performance. Now, what comes for this is that the mainstream media were hypocrites for protecting him all the way along.
When they knew that he was suffering from mental decline.
Yeah. I just want to play you a little montage of how they were protecting Joe Biden right up to that debate. It's cut number 4.
He's very lucid, very well informed. He speaks quietly and a little bit slowly, but,
We've spent way too much time talking about this president's age. And I'll say it again. When Ronald Reagan was the oldest person to ever be in the White House and to run for re-election, I don't recall a lot of people within his own party talking about the fact that we need to get another person. He's too old.
He's totally focused. He's very sharp. And the proof is in the performance.
But comparing that guy's mental state, I've said it for years now, he's cogent. But I undersold him when I said he was cogent. He's far beyond cogent. In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been. Intellectually, analytically.
One of the themes this election cycle is that Joe Biden is too old to lead. And so everyone is seizing upon this. And it is a classic disinformation tactic.
There's a growing and insidious trend in right-wing media, broadcast, print, and social media. It is to take highly misleading and selectively edited videos of President Biden directly from Republican National Committee social media accounts and then use those videos to spread messages virally to cast doubt on President Biden's fitness for office.
One of those was Joe Scarborough.
Yes.
Of MSNBC. And he was the one who was saying he's cogent. He's as sharp as he's ever been. And he was saying that, I think, March or April, that interview that you heard right there.
Yeah.
And then it was so funny because the day after the debate, he just looks like he's just pale white, like the life's been sucked out of him. Joe Scarborough goes, "Who we going to?" Basically, he goes, "That was awful. Who we going to get? We got to replace him."
Yeah.
So, yeah. Listen, in hindsight, the Biden team would have done better not to ever have a debate.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because that was so damaging. I don't think that's not going to lead. That he's not, whether he loses or wins in November, I don't know. It remains to be seen. But he's not recovering.
No.
There's not going to be anybody coming back saying now, well, look how he's back now. He had a bad night, but he's back now. Look at him rolling.
Well, and now, so the debate in September, that's the only other presidential debate.
You got to cancel that.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do? If you cancel it, that only solidifies people's perception
That's true.
that he's not able to do it.
That's true.
But if you allow him to debate that close to the election, and he has another performance like that?
Yeah, but I think he needs to, now, just thinking about it on the fly here, I think he needs to do it because there's nowhere to go but up.
Oh, that's a good point.
Because if he could somehow manage a respectable showing in a second debate, then the narrative would become, well, he just had a bad night.
He did have a bad night. That's what they'll say.
Yeah, so I would do it again. Couldn't hurt you.
You're right. It'd be hard to sink lower than your own members of your own party suggesting that we get rid of the guy.
You're listening to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Fred, have we heard from Vice President Kamala Harris on this?
Publicly, she still supports the president. But a lot of people are talking about, the next story down these days is, okay, what happens if Joe Biden decides, okay, I'm out of here. I don't have the support of the party. Then Kamala Harris, her name pops up And
and then pops back down.
and then it pops back down. I wanted to play you a little montage and give you. Let's go back and down memory lane over the last 3.5 years, and some of the
It'd
best.
be nice to have a salad.
The best
this time of day.
Yes,
a word salad.
The best of Kamala Harris. Here we go. Cut number 5.
There are, people of every age and gender, by the way, who see something about being the first that lets them know they don't need to be limited by other people's limited understanding of who can do what.
AI is kind of a fancy thing. It's, first of all, it's 2 letters. It means artificial intelligence. But ultimately what it is it's about machine learning. And so the machine is taught.
Culture is, it is a reflection of our moment and our time. And we should always find times to express how we feel about the moment that is a reflection of joy, because, it comes in the morning.
I'm just going to tell you.
Wow.
When I was growing up and I was a teenager and I would try to convince my dad about, borrowing the car for Saturday night, and, he'd start to ask me questions about what I'm going to do, and I'm trying to do a sufficiently good job to convince him, tossing in everything but the kitchen sink. My dad would sometimes look at me and he would say, "That's the biggest bunch of nothing I ever heard. No, you can't go. Okay, just end it." And that's what I feel like when I listen to Kamala Harris. Listen, here's the Democratic Party is in such big trouble because let's say Joe Biden before the election, whether it's before the convention or not, or just before the general election, and Joe Biden steps down. He says, "I'm not going to run for re-election."
Yep.
Well, it's still 6 months before inauguration of the new president.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remain in office, Mr. Incompetent, Mr. I don't have the mental faculties to run a campaign and win re-election? Then what are you doing going to stay in the White House?
Yeah.
So then does Joe Biden resign from the White House? If not, he's essentially saying, I'm not good enough to win re-election, but I'm going to still have my finger on the nuclear button.
Yeah. Well, and if he does step down from the office immediately, that's who's coming in.
That's right.
And, I mean, does she excite the voters of the United States of America?
I tell you what, guys, this is still a 50-50 country. And the race in November, this is me talking here, not speaking for even you guys, but it's going to be still razor thin. I mean, people may say, you're kidding me. Even after Biden's dismal performance and people know he's brain, I wouldn't say brain dead, but I mean, he's brain compromised. should I say that? Because of his age and the
brain challenged.
Still, Democrats are going to vote Democrat, and they're not going to vote for Trump just because Biden's can't talk, coherently.
They may stay home.
They may stay home.
But I'll tell you something else. If the Democrats succeed in pushing Joe Biden out, almost anybody they put in, maybe with the exception of Kamala Harris, almost anybody they put in is probably going to reinvigorate the Democratic vote, like you said.
Yeah.
It will be still razor thin outcome.
Yeah, because I was looking at the polling from this morning. This is from Saturday. Polling, I follow Real Clear Politics. And this is just one poll. Okay, this is Bloomberg, Consult, whatever that is. Anyway, they did a poll of various states, and they show Biden up 47-44 in Wisconsin. Biden up 48-43 in Michigan. Now, Trump's ahead in Pennsylvania.
Right.
Trump's ahead in North Carolina. Trump's ahead in Georgia, 47-46. I'm just saying this is still going to be very, very close election because we've had close elections, sometimes razor thin, since Bush versus Hanging Chad's Gore.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. Yep. 2000.
And that's where our country's been divided. So I would just say, in my view, this ain't over yet. Okay,
Right.
we got quite a ways to go. We'll be back momentarily.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
One day, a friend and I were walking just to the south of the old city of Jerusalem. We were headed down to the Pool of Siloam. We were passing through an Arab residential section, and several children were playing in the streets. The children were looking at us very closely, for they knew that we were tourists. I decided to see if I could speak a word of greeting in a language they would understand. Now, I did not know how to greet them in their language, but I knew that their word for greeting and the Jewish word of greeting, shalom, were very similar in sound. I looked at one group of little children and tried my luck. Shalom, I said as best I could. Immediately a smile appeared on their faces, and a familiar word came back. Hello, they replied. I tried to talk to them in English, but they couldn't understand a word I said. Evidently they, like myself, knew only the one word of foreign language. So my friend and I continued on down the street. With each child I waved my hand and said, Shalom, and always the reply came back, Hello. Each child replied with a word I knew and a big smile. On down the road away, my friend made a comment. You know, a smile is understood in any language. And it is. When words cannot be understood, a smile can. We were able to communicate with little children, and they with us, through the simple effort of a smile. My day was made a whole lot better by little children who greeted us, grinning from ear to ear and laughing at my crude efforts to say hello in their language. A smile is such a simple thing, it can never be complicated. It's so simple that little children, the world over, know what it means. And a smile certainly has good effects on both the one who uses it and the one to whom it is expressed. I've been around people who have forgotten how to smile. Many of them are so sour you wonder if they ever knew how. And I must confess that rather than adding any sunshine to my day, they generally succeeded in detracting from it. William Shakespeare once wrote, "The robbed that smiles steals something from the thief." And it was Nathaniel Hawthorne who wrote, "A stale article, if you will dip it in a good, warm, sunny smile, will go off better than a fresh one that you've scrawled upon." It doesn't take much effort to smile, nor any knowledge at all. It only takes a good attitude in the heart. And smiling takes only about half the physical effort of a frown. Life can get so complicated at times that it takes a few simple things to get it going right again. Simple things have a way of making life more enjoyable. And, as we all know, a smile is such a simple thing.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
For he has rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of the Son he loves. Colossians 1:13.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Ed, and Fred. If you missed the last 15 or 20 minutes, it's your loss. Because we pretty well covered national politics and presidential politics.
And we were profound.
Profound, thorough.
Inspiring, maybe.
And while Kamala Harris, the vice president, brings the word salads.
Yes. We bring the dressing.
We're Arby's. No, we're Arby's.
We bring the meat.
We bring the meats. Don't they say we got the meat?
We have the meats.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. We have the meats. Don't they say meats?
Yes.
Yeah. Then they show these big, juicy sandwiches.
Yeah. Looks just like what you buy when you go there.
No food on TV ever looks like what you get in the restaurant. I'm sorry to say. But anyway, we thank you for listening to American Family Radio. Well, we have in studio with us a good friend of the ministry, Brother Charlie Wysong from Chattanooga, Tennessee. Good morning, Charlie.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Good to see you again,
Thank
brother.
you, Ted.
And Charlie came and shared with our staff this morning at devotion, and we're going to talk about the 10 Commandments project and whatever else God may lay on your heart here, Charlie, going for the next few minutes. Now, you live in Chattanooga, and we have a new radio. Well, I say new. We've been on the air a couple of years there.
Yeah. Tim, there's a man in Tennessee. He's probably listening right now, and he and I have gone to church together, and we've been involved in some political things. And he came running to me at church one day. He says, "I just found this radio station." He said, "It's great."
Finally, I can listen where crazy Christians talk like me.
That's right.
I'm just kidding about the crazy, but I mean, it is nice when to have a radio station. We get this all the time of people who are like-minded.
That's right.
You know.
Exactly right. It's encouraging.
Amen.
It's encouraging. You find somebody that's not only thinks like you, but has the opportunity to get their voice out into the community.
Amen.
Right.
We've had a great response from our new listening family. I say new. In Chattanooga, I'm guessing 3 years, something like that. We've been on the air in Chattanooga. Charlie, tell us why are you in Tupelo?
Why am I in Tupelo? I spoke at 2 churches yesterday, and then I was here for the devotions this morning. And really what I'm trying to do, Tim, is I'm trying to promote a knowledge of the 10 Commandments in this country. Not so much, not so much, but maybe not those that are outside the church, but those that are inside the church. I go to churches, and I'll ask them, "I'd like you to write out the 10 Commandments. They don't have to be in order. They don't have to be word for word, and not even 1%.
What?
Not even 1%. And
To
that
do
includes...
not even, you don't only have to do it in order, not word for word, and they still...
Right. I mean, that's just... And I worded the test so people wouldn't freeze up and say, "Oh, I don't know them in order." And I don't know them for word. And so, but I mean, that includes the pastor. And so this one pastor...
You don't put him on the spot or do you? You don't get up in the pulpit and say, "All right, pastor, come up here. We're about to do a test." You don't do that to him, do you?
Well, no.
Okay.
No, we'll do that.
Okay, but
so,
maybe you should, but you don't.
But
you're a little more gracious.
But
okay,
I did do this. There's a man in Chattanooga, and his life verse is Proverbs 22:1.
Yeah.
A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches.
Mm-hmm.
And he is a man of international reputation and influence.
Right.
And we went to lunch. I took him to lunch, and I said, our nation is being destroyed before our very eyes. And he agreed with me. And I said, "Let me show you why."
Mm-hmm.
And I shoved a blank sheet of paper across the table to him.
Right.
And I said, "I'd like you to write out the 10 Commandments.
Right.
They don't have to be in order. They don't have to be word for word."
He couldn't do it.
He couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And
so you're saying the church doesn't know the 10 Commandments?
The church doesn't know the 10 Commandments.
And Christian homes oftentimes don't.
Right. And see, let me give an example back into history. You got King David, and he's committed adultery with Bathsheba. He has had her husband murdered. And now almost a year goes by, and Nathan goes to him and says, "You're the man." Mm-hmm. That would never have happened if David had been going down the 10 Commandments and saying, "Did I take God's name in vain today?
Mm-hmm.
Did I keep the Sabbath day? Did I honor my parents? Did I kill? Did I commit adultery?"
Well, also in light of Jesus' words in the Sermon on the Mount, he goes beyond, for the Christian, he goes beyond the literal no, I didn't murder anybody today, but do I have hate in my heart?
Yes. Right.
So it is the 10 Commandments, but it's also what Jesus expounded on.
Absolutely.
In terms of evaluating our own lives on a daily basis. Let me ask you this question then: the 10 Commandments. What do you say if somebody says, "Charlie, that's Old Testament, man. That's for the Jews."
Yeah.
The children of Israel back in the day, and it's good historical reading, but that's not applicable to us today. What would you say to that?
Right. Well, Paul said in Romans 7:7, he said, I had not known sin but by the law. I had not known lust except the commandment had said, thou shalt not covet. Now, I had a man take me to a Bible study. He was a lawyer there in Chattanooga. And he introduced me and he said, Charlie's done a lot of work with the 10 Commandments. And I'm telling you, this guy is just looking for a fight. And he turns to me and says, well, we're not under law, we're under grace. Well, first of all, that's not the whole verse.
I say that to the highway patrolman.
Go what?
But it didn't work. I said that to the highway patrolman.
Oh.
I said, I'm not under the law, I'm under grace. He said, I don't care, you're going 82. You're still getting a ticket. You can take up your grace with the judge. Just kidding. Go ahead.
And God does the same thing to us.
Right.
We keep on. So here's what I said to the man. And I'd say this is probably the best response to an issue like this I've ever had. And I'm not usually quick on my feet like this, but I said, well, brother, I said, you show me a man that lies and commits adultery and takes God's name in vain. I said, I'll show you a man who's not walking in fellowship with God the Father.
Mm-hmm.
And here in Hebrews, he says, if you be without chastisement, then are you bastards and not sons. Mm-hmm. If you're not being disciplined for your sins, something's wrong.
Yeah.
And God didn't save me. In fact, I'd say this: the great experience of my life was this, that I did not sin like I used to. I was free from sins that I had a hold on me.
Talking to Charlie Wysong in studio with us. He's visiting Tupelo today from Chattanooga. And you're listening to American Family Radio. And how old are you now? What age are you?
I'm 83 now.
83, man.
And I have 15 children, 11 boys and 4 girls, no adoptions and no twins, and 53 expecting 54 grandchildren.
That sounds like the Old Testament. Doesn't it to you guys?
It does.
Hey, I wanted to just quote just a passage from the New Testament. This is from 1 Timothy chapter 1. The Apostle Paul says, we know that the law is good if one uses it properly. We also know that the law is not made for the righteous, but for lawbreakers and rebels, the ungodly and sinful, the holy and irreligious. And there's another, the list continues, and for whatever else is contrary to sound doctrine.
Where are you reading from?
This is from 1 Timothy chapter 1, beginning in verse 8. It seems clear to me that, Charlie, one of the things you have purpose to do in your heart is to get the 10 Commandments out into our culture back again, including our churches, but also into our culture, putting it on your front lawn and all those kinds of bumper stickers, all those kind of things. And what Paul seems to be saying here is that God uses the law, including the 10 Commandments, to convict people of sin. Even Christians could be convicted of those kind of things. Like Tim said, Jesus expands that kind of penetrating glare and gaze of God into the heart.
Yes.
Where anger, for example, and hatred is the same as murder. But I find this to be a very worthwhile project. And we might say, I am in full agreement. When you slid that empty blank piece of paper and said, this is what is is ruining our country.
Yeah.
People don't know the 10 Commandments. They were removed from classrooms because of a 1980 Supreme Court ruling.
Yes.
Why do you think it's important for the 10 Commandments to get out in public?
Well, first of all, what we're losing in this country is we're losing the common moral code that we've had for years.
Yes.
That we inherited.
Yes.
And when you lose that common moral code, then it's every man doing that which is right in his own eyes.
Right.
And we're back to the book of Judges.
Yes.
And
You'll have collapse.
And what?
You will eventually have a collapse.
That's right.
I don't care how rich you are, or whatever. Excuse me for interrupting, but if you lose what you're talking about, if we completely lose our moral fabric in our society, and we're, those of us standing up for God's moral values today are under siege. It's reversed from the from the era even you grew up in.
Yes.
Which would have been the 1890s. Oh, my bad. Oh, anyway, sorry, Charlie.
Math is not
sorry
subject,
for the old
Charlie.
people joke, man. Sorry. Anyway, no. Well, what I'm talking about, and we've talked about this before. If you look back, listen, people. The United States of America, 100 years from now, we could be going. They could be reading history books about us somewhere else in the world, going, whatever happened to that great nation?
Yeah.
Well, whatever happened to that great nation is they forgot they forgot the blessings of God and the God of their fathers, and they mocked and ridiculed and scoffed at the things of God, which we're seeing going on in not only in popular culture, but even some people on the conservative side. Now I listen to these conservative commentators sometimes, and I go, why are you cursing like that publicly, man? No, nobody wants to listen to that stuff, and I'm just saying that. But if we lose the moral, the common moral fabric of our country, eventually you collapse. It may take time, but eventually, and now, or God may bring a cataclysmic. Did I get that word right?
Yeah.
I was trying not to do a Kamala Harris here, but a cataclysmic. God may bring a cataclysmic event to a black swan, or whatever they say.
Yeah, black swan event.
That shocks our nation. It says, wait a minute, you're not too big to fail.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? Now, the world may not see that as God's judgment, but we Christians know we can see with spiritual eyes what's happening in our country right now. So anyway, I don't mean to.
Well, I think we ought to see enough right now to realize we've got to come back to God's law.
And if we don't,
there's
trouble ahead.
There's trouble ahead.
Serious trouble ahead.
I think there's signs of encouragement, though.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what just happened in Louisiana.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, can I say something that's maybe not related to the religious? What about Bud Light? What about Bud Light? They put up this homosexual to be the spokesman for him.
Transgender person, yeah.
And something is going on.
Yes.
The comment, I mean,
I don't buy it anymore.
I don't go to church with anybody
What? Huh? I'm not Baptist. Can I drink a beer once in a while without being judged?
I'm not judging you. I know for a fact. I know for a fact you don't buy.
I don't drink beer.
You don't drink beer.
My dad told me when I was 16, when I tried beer, he said he knew I'd tried beer.
Yeah.
That's,
Dads are pretty smart.
Usually teenage boys figure, their dads figure them.
Yeah.
He said, I shouldn't say. He said, "What does it taste like?" Anyway, I won't go any further on that. But anyway, where were we? Well, I was just saying that I don't. I was kidding. I don't drink beer.
But Charlie was talking about Bud Light and what the response to that indicated.
Right. Yeah. But there is an underlying moral consensus that sodomy is wrong.
Yes.
And they don't like it. There's some other things that have happened. I think the response, and I praise God for AFA leading the charge on this, was Target.
Yeah.
Target.
Well, look what Tractor Supply just did.
Yeah.
We're going to have a story on that next half hour. Tractor Supply, to their credit, they just did a 180.
Yes.
They were headed down the woke
pathway,
and they came out with a statement, and they said basically it was a statement of repentance. Huh?
Yeah.
And we're Tractor Supply Company, which is great news. We're going to talk about that after that. Charlie, would you point anybody to any particular website, or are you just here to generally encourage?
Well, I've got
go ahead.
An embryonic website up there called 10 Laws.
I've never heard of one of those.
Yeah.
An embryonic website.
Well,
is that legal?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
But
what is? It's a new one. It's a new website. What is it? What is it?
But it's 10laws.us.
Okay.
10laws.us.
10laws.us. talking to Charlie Wysong from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And you got, I think people are still in shock for what you said. Well, you and your wife,
15 children.
Yeah, what's her name?
But
your wife?
Brenda.
She had a big part in this.
She did have
Yeah. So,
well,
you and Brenda.
I'll say this.
Yeah.
Not only do we have 15, we homeschooled all of them, and I delivered 10 of them at home.
Wow.
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
I don't know.
You're a midwife, too?
Yeah, sure.
You're becoming, since I met you this morning, you're becoming a heroic figure to me.
Yeah.
You delivered 10 children at home.
Right.
So, and
but I will say this. I don't want to. I did deliver 2 or 3 all by myself, and it wasn't by choice. It just happened.
Yeah, that happens.
But we had a midwife. But anyway,
I have.
She didn't show up.
Of course, I'm 60. I'm 61. You're 83. Is that what you said?
83.
You have how many grandchildren?
53.
And you said this morning in devotions that you split wood
I
for your fireplace at
did.
83.
I find it a very relaxing exercise.
All right, I'm going to slide you a piece of paper.
All right.
And I want you to write your 53 grandchildren's names. And I don't want you to leave in their middle names.
And they got to be in order.
Now, you're not kidding. I know you're not, but I mean that's still stunning to hear somebody has 53 grandchildren.
But
at
one on
some
the way.
point you got to say we're not coming to no more birthday party. Okay, we've done that. I'll come to one birthday party for
all
each
of them.
grandchildren, but after that, I'll go broke.
But
Anyway,
I do pray for my grandchildren, so I can name them all. And my wife and I
good
will
for you, brother.
Amen. But my wife and I will sit there, and she will pray for this family, and I'll pray for the next family, and we'll go back and forth like that. But she prays for the in-laws.
Wow.
Oh, God gave me a great wife.
I'm about to have number 11. I just don't even feel like I'm a man here next to you. But I'm here thinking, I tell people, we're about to have number 11. Walker and Lexi are going to have a baby girl. Their first girl. They had 4 boys, and now God's going to give them a girl in October. And that poor girl's never going to get a date. So, I see she got 4 brothers older than her, but I was thinking about how. Well, I don't know what I was thinking about. I had a Joe Biden moment there. So anyway,
about not being able to remember names.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. So I'm praying at night. And I say, I'll start listing off, and then I get to God bless number 8. you know who they are, Lord, and what their needs are. But it's just sometimes it's hard to remember everything.
So we had a man down in Chickamauga, which is right outside Chattanooga, and he was a mechanic. He only called my children by numbers. Well, one day he died, and they wanted to use one of my sons as a pallbearer, and they called up and they said, "What's number 4's real name?"
what?
Chickamauga.
Chickamauga?
Yeah.
Well, we ain't got nothing on Tennessee as far as names of
And
towns.
I will say, going back to things that were encouraging, the state of Tennessee has set aside the day of July for a day of prayer and fast, or a month of prayer and fasting.
Right.
South Korea heard about it. They got so excited about it that they're going to start praying for Tennessee.
Wow.
Praise God.
A lot of Christians in South Korea.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Brother Charlie.
Thank you.
Being in Tupelo, visit with us, and sharing your story. There's so much more to Charlie's ministry. We didn't get into the pro-life issue, but we just want to,
before we cut them loose here, at that website that you talked about, it's in embryonic form, but you can go to it.
Yeah.
There are signs to put in your yard with the
Yes.
10 Commandments.
Yes.
And they can get those at that website.
where? What's the website again?
Well, this took me to 1,000,000yardsigns.com.
Right.
When I typed in what you said.
But
so which one do they go to?
Go to 10laws.us.
10laws.us.
It'll take you to that.
Okay.
But and that brings up a good point. What we're trying to do is put out 1 million yard signs before this election takes place. of the Ten Commandments and let God know we're not ashamed of his law, that we're sorry we've forgotten his
Well, look
law.
what the state of Louisiana just did.
Right.
They just passed a law in their legislature and signed by the governor where the Ten Commandments will now be on display in all public schools.
Yes.
Yep. Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Amen.
I mean, that's pretty impressive right there. And other states may soon follow. Thank you, Charlie, for coming by, my friend.
Thank you, Tim.
Charlie Wysong joining us. He drove is it 5 hours from Tupelo to Chattanooga?
4 to 5.
By the way, Chattanooga is one of the prettiest cities in America, and I've traveled all over the country. With the Tennessee River flowing through there, and you got Lookout Mountain, and you got where is it? They go to whitewater rafting out there. Come on,
you don't do a lot of that.
Ocoee.
Yeah, Ocoee.
Ocoee River.
And they also have don't they have a Dollar General, don't
That's
they?
right. Got a few of those.
If you don't have a Dollar General, it ain't moving there.
We got one on either side of our house.
Anyway, Chattanooga, very pretty city in America. All right, you're listening to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Fred, we got about 5 minutes left on this segment. What do you got next for us?
Well, as we kind of already talked about, the media is a big part of the story, the Joe Biden story right now. And there was a story over the weekend. There was a talk show host, Andrea Lawful Sanders. She works at a radio station in Philadelphia, WURD, and she landed an interview with the president. But the big story is she doesn't have a job today. And the reason she didn't have a job today, the White House emailed the questions that they wanted her to ask the president. And she took those questions. And
admitted it.
And admitted it. This is what she had to say, cut number 10.
The questions were sent to me for approval. I approved them.
Okay, so the White House sent the questions to you ahead of the interview?
Yes.
Okay.
I got several questions, 8 of them, and the 4 that were chosen were the ones that I approved.
Well, there you have it. Yeah.
She lost her job?
She lost her job. Exactly.
Why?
Well, it kind of affects your credibility. You're interviewing a politician.
Excuse me, and I don't mean to insult the lady. I don't even know her. If she's on radio confessing to this, she's not very bright. Because is she on there? And then did she lose her job subsequent to?
Subsequent to
the interview that I just heard?
Yes.
I don't know what to say about that.
She admitted, I'm not sure the total sequence, but she admitted that she took the questions from the White House and she used those questions.
Okay. Now, so you got Joe Biden doing an interview on a
Yes.
Philadelphia radio station.
Yes.
Sound like to me she's a black lady.
Yes.
So it's probably a predominantly black radio station listenership because he's trying to. Joe Biden panders just, huh?
Yes.
Joe, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. Remember that one?
That was 2020.
Yeah. So he's trying to pander.
Yes.
And so the White House. I don't blame the White House press, whoever handles Biden, for submitting questions. If my candidate was in as bad a shape as Biden is cognitively, I'd be handing them questions too, hoping that they used them. But she's saying yes, I used them.
Yeah. But the station manager basically, in a statement they released, it has said it affects our credibility.
Sure.
As a radio station, when the news gets out there that we just took the questions from the White House,
right,
and we abided by their wishes,
right. You're just a mouthpiece for the White House.
Well, and that's what the CEO said. He said WURD radio is not a mouthpiece for the Biden or any other administration.
Right.
Trying to restore the credibility.
Well, good for them.
Yeah.
Good for them. Sorry the lady lost her job, but next time don't go on national television and say, I did something dumb. But I want to, huh?
Right.
All right. So we'll be back momentarily with more of Today's Issues on AFR.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Man, we have such a cultural war against God's ways. I really wish I could make a more positive impact.
If that's you, you can. AFA President Tim Wildman invites you to join AFA Action Alerts. Sign up to receive 2 weekly emails with calls to action on foundational family, national, and Christian matters. Prayerfully sign up on the alerts page at afaaction.net.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. More than 100 people were shot in Chicago over the extended 4th of July holiday weekend, and 19 of them died. Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Snelling telling reporters they're using all of their resources to try and find the suspects responsible for a string of shootings, and is calling on community members who may have information to come forward.
We need to take these people off the street, and we need to keep them off the street so that they don't reoffend, so that they don't destroy other families.
4 more Democrats are joining calls for President Biden to end his re-election bid. This as the Biden campaign is facing mounting pressure following the president's disastrous debate performance 2 weeks ago and a recent ABC News interview. But remember, the media has strongly defended Biden.
He's very lucid, very well informed. He speaks quietly and a little bit slowly, but,
We've spent way too much time talking about this president's age. And I'll say it again. When Ronald Reagan was the oldest person to ever be in the White House and to run for re-election, I don't recall a lot of people within his own party talking about the fact that we need to get another person. He's too old.
He's totally focused. He's very sharp. And the proof is in the performance.
He's far beyond cogent. In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been.
One of the themes this election cycle is that Joe Biden is too old to lead. And so everyone is seizing upon this. And it is a classic disinformation tactic.
There's a growing and insidious trend in right-wing media, broadcast, print, and social media. It is to take highly misleading and selectively edited videos of President Biden directly from Republican National Committee social media accounts and then use those videos to spread messages virally to cast doubt on President Biden's fitness for office.
Former Ohio Democrat Congressman Tim Ryan says Democrats are in trouble and they know it.
I'm here in Ohio, you can't go to a coffee shop, you can't go to a bar, you can't go to a soccer game where people aren't talking about this in a negative sense. And so that reality is there. And I think, it's important to be loyal, but part of being loyal is being honest. And I think we have to be honest to each other of just how difficult of a situation this is.
There's an effort to get local TV stations to talk more about so-called man-made climate change. Robert Thornton explains.
When you watch your favorite local TV meteorologist, you're probably interested in finding out about severe weather or what the weather will be for today or tonight or in the coming days. But climate change? There are several viewpoints on the subject, ranging from man is doing nothing to affect the climate to man is doing a little to it's all caused by humans. What was once just a topic for mainstream national media outlets has found its way to local television markets. As first reported by the New York Times, a TV weatherman took a job at KCCI in Des Moines, Iowa. Station leadership wanted him to talk about climate change, but many of the viewers felt differently, and he began getting hate mail and even a death threat. Dr. Cal Beisner is president of the Cornwall Alliance.
An organization called Climate Matters is pouring money into local weather stations to get them to have their local forecasters ring the climate alarm bell, so to speak.
Retired broadcast meteorologist Scott Chesner spent 42 years in the business with stints at AccuWeather, the Dallas-Fort Worth TV market, and in East Texas.
I'm glad that I wasn't asked to do that during my career, because I would have been fired pretty quickly, probably. It's dishonest in that it's presenting theory as being fact.
He said it's a ploy to get more viewers. He said the recent total solar eclipse brought a drop in temperatures, a natural cause of climate change.
And hurricane conditions are still pummeling parts of South Texas.
More than 1 million utilities customers are said to have electric service affected in the Houston area following the arrival of Hurricane Beryl. Landfall, or where the storm's center reaches land, is reportedly at Matagorda, roughly 100 miles south of Galveston. The storm is moving inland, but risks of hurricane-strength wind and coastal storm surge persist. Eben Brown, Fox News.
More news online at afn.net. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Hey, man, what are you doing?
I'm just lying here relaxing in a stream. I call it streaming.
Okay, you know that word already has another meaning, right?
AFA Streaming offers free and subscription video content. Titles like By Design, The God Who Speaks, and Asbury Revival, Desperate for More. You'll also find video versions of AFR programs. Visit afa.net and click on Streaming. Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome back, everybody. If you're wondering what we did with Tim, since I'm stepping in for Tim, Tim had to step out. He is going up to Nashville for a meeting, so he had to leave a little bit. I think Tim just does whatever his wife tells him to do when it comes to travel. Allison is super organized. So anyway, I will be taking over for the last 25 minutes, minus a handful of seconds. So Fred Jackson still remains here in the studio. And then Steve Paisley Jordahl joins us.
I'm sitting in the boss's chair, so shouldn't I be in charge for the next?
You can. You can be in charge.
That would not go well,
Steve,
I don't think.
You know, if it's that important to you, you can.
No, well, if that's the case, I'm going to need my own intro.
You're going to need your own intro.
I can't do it if it's just a generic,
I had a generic intro for like 20 years, so
until I get that, I'm boycotting leading this show until I get that.
All right. By the way, Fred, a wonderful last segment with Charlie Wysong.
Oh, that
and the importance of the Ten Commandments. That's he's onto something, and he's not the only one. Pastor Joseph Parker, who sat in the studio with us, he didn't say anything during that segment, but he has a Ten Commandments project that AFA does.
Yes.
And there really is something to that. In fact, I do mention periodically when we talk about the 1980 ruling where the Supreme Court said you can't post the Ten Commandments in public schools any longer. Part of their reasoning, I am paraphrasing here, was the Supreme Court said if you post the Ten Commandments in school hallways, the students will read the Ten Commandments and be tempted to follow them.
Yes, it might have an influence.
It might have an influence. And I always thought, so what's wrong with that? And now, 40 years later plus, we see what's wrong with the Supreme Court ruling.
Well, look at what has happened since that ruling, and other people have pointed this out.
Right.
That was a Kentucky case,
yes,
as I recollect. And what has happened in our nation's schools, we've had tragic shootings,
right,
multiple deaths in there, drugs. What our kids are being taught in school.
Yes.
Instead of biblical standards.
Right.
What we're having is standards being taught that are 180 degrees to what the Bible teaches. But you know what? I'm encouraged because I'm starting to see some real pushback against that.
Yes.
The nation has gone so far in the other direction. There are, I think, a growing number of Americans who are basically saying, wait a minute, this is going too far.
Right.
When you look at, and I keep going back to Virginia as the example of what happened there when a transgender, a boy who claimed to be a girl, went into a girl's washroom, sexually assaulted a little girl there, and then was transferred off to another school, and the same thing happened again.
Right.
So parents, an uprising began.
Right.
Which resulted in a change, a political change in the state government there.
Right.
Republicans who fought for parental rights. And we're starting to see this Moms for Liberty. There's groups that are starting. And it's the kind of thing, American Family Association is being vindicated.
Right.
For years, our founder, Brother Don, warned about if you move away from godly standards, this is what will happen in your church denomination.
Yes.
This is what will happen in your country. This is what will happen in your schools. This is what will happen in your families. And so people are starting to say, that was right.
Right.
So how do we dig ourselves out of this hole? Well, how do you dig yourselves out? You need to repent before the Lord.
Right.
And get back to saying, you know what? For example, things like the Ten Commandments. Now, we aren't saved by the law.
Right.
But the law, the Bible says, is our schoolmaster.
Yes. Leading us to Christ.
Leading us to Christ. And so having those on display, I'm so proud of what happened in Louisiana.
Yeah.
What courage by lawmakers there. Congratulations, men and women there.
Right.
In that state who are, and there's going to be fights.
Right.
Legal fights over this. But taking that stand because they understand the importance. We serve a God who doesn't change.
Right.
And if people start looking at those, like that court decision you said, and it starts to have an influence on the kids,
right?
Are you going to argue against that? That's bad? Yeah. Praise the Lord.
Well, Steve, that was good preaching, by the way, Fred.
I
don't know if you got a chance to listen to Charlie Wysong.
I did a little bit of it.
A little bit.
I was doing a couple other things as well, but no, very good. And I said it on the devotions this morning. It's very good.
Yeah, excellent. All right, well, let's get to our stories.
All right, I want to start here. Well, before we get off of the Joe Biden train, he was in Philadelphia over the weekend. And he wanted to thank the good people of Philadelphia for helping him run a campaign. Only one problem. The campaign was in Delaware, not in Philadelphia. So, let's listen to – I don't have my cut sheet here. What cut is it, Fred?
It is going to be cut number 7.
But look, even when I was running for Senate, and each time I ran, quite frankly, not a joke, Philadelphia in particular – got me across the line. No, I'm not joking. No, I mean it seriously. Organizationally and in terms of fundraising, the whole deal.
Yeah, you can tell that he's unsure of himself when he says he's not joking.
Right. So he was basically saying when he was running for the Senate, and I'm sure re-election in the Senate for Delaware, that Philadelphia entered into the picture. We were talking about in our story meeting, I could see where Democrats perhaps living in Philadelphia might contribute to him one state, next state over. But really, as you mentioned, why, since you have your own candidates
their own
running
senators,
in
and it wasn't like he was a national figure at that point. He was
right.
just a senator from Delaware.
So he's probably just wrong here in this speech.
I think he was he was raised Puerto Rican, black, Chinese, Jewish.
Right. Whoever he's
and ran
to.
for Senate in Delaware in Pennsylvania. So there's all kinds of stuff that's good stuff going on. This is how far he's gone. I showed you guys this picture, but we've known for a while now that Joe Biden's staff gives him cheat sheets, right? With reporters' names or talking points. This is how bad it's gotten, and I'll see if I can send this to Brent to put it up on our Facebook page. But now they are providing you with pictures on how to walk onto the stage. This is
what it looks like. Walk on and walk off.
This is where the podium is. This is where you exit. Because it's not been good. So, our president is need of a little bit of help, and he's kind of getting it. That's not. I'll. It might be after the show. I'll send the link to Brent. All right, you guys mentioned last hour Tractor Supply.
Yes.
The walking back that Tractor Supply did, and I think it's the first of several gains that we're going to have in sense and common sense. Roll back the DEI thing, but let's take a look specifically at what happened at Tractor Supply. So, Tractor Supply, for some reason, in the last couple of years, put themselves in a DEI department, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Started having climate goals. It was reporting its gay friendliness to the Human Rights Campaign, which is a homosexual activist group that puts out a rating every year about the most gay-friendly businesses and everything. And there's a guy named Robbie Starbuck, which I think is one of the best names in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Nothing to do with the coffee company, but his name is Robbie Starbuck, and he thought this isn't right. I think he has a farm. He shopped at Tractor Supply, so he kind of individually started a campaign, Write Tractor Supply. He got employees from Tractor Supply to write, and Tractor Supply listened. I want you to hear what Robbie Starbuck has to say, then I'll read some from Tractor Supply's company, our statement. So this is what Robbie Starbuck, who organized this boycott, had to say, cut 11.
This is the first Fortune 300 company in our lifetimes to go backwards on ESG, DEI, and all these woke causes and donations in record speed, mind you. They're going to stop funding all of these woke causes, and instead they're going to fund things that are nonpartisan in nature, like agriculture education, animal welfare, veterans causes. BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street are not their customers. They are not walking through the doors to get farm supplies. People like myself and my neighbors are, because we own farms. We are setting a new standard, and corporations and their CEOs are going to have to reckon with this. They're going to have to understand that they may be next. If you get strategic and you look at companies who depend on that middle America vote, they depend on you walking into that store. Those are the companies where you can extract change first. And as a by-proxy effect, you're going to see other companies start to make changes because they see that a certain type of doing business is toxic.
That's a more eloquent way of saying go woke, go broke.
Fred, I'm going to say this. And by the way, folks, let me point you to AFA.net. That is our ministry website. AFR, for example, AFR.net is a part of that umbrella organization. But at AFA.net, we always have our action alerts front and center on our homepage. And we do have a petition we're asking our supporters, listeners to AFR, to sign thanking Tractor Supply. So if you will go to AFA.net, you will see that action alert right there on the homepage. Please click through. It's easy to sign up for action alerts if you haven't already, but sign that petition to thank Tractor Supply for their decision. Now, Fred, what I was going to say is what may happen going forward. The Human Rights Campaign, with its equality index, that's what Steve was talking about, has basically had a 15-year run where everybody, all these major companies and corporations, just basically fell over themselves to appear as if they are very supportive of the LGBTQ community. And the Human Rights Campaign had that all to themselves.
Yeah.
Until 2020, we saw the explosion of critical race theory, DEI, all these things, the woke agenda, which is itself an umbrella. I think what may happen is that groups like the Human Rights Campaign may lose influence because people who reject this diversity, equity, and inclusion movement, the woke movement, will just simply toss the LGBTQ cause into the basket.
Yes.
And you may see, like we mentioned in the first hour with Bud Light and this reaction to the transgender movement, they all may get tossed in the same basket and all may suffer the consequences as Americans reject the woke agenda.
Yeah, it took a while for Americans, I think, to catch on to just how strong this wave was from the left. But what they're also beginning to understand, it's a fairly small group that's been driving this.
Right.
You know, groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Yeah.
Affording themselves the right to say that group is a hate group.
Yes.
Just because they disagree with homosexuality. And so for a while, the American people were going to say, okay, that doesn't impact me. I'll just let it slide. The same with the DEI stuff. It's not the kind of thing that a given company put up on their banner in front of their store.
Right.
But now the American people have become far more educated on what it means. Because of DEI, you have some people getting jobs when other people are more qualified for those jobs.
Right. Great jump here.
Yes. So that's a good example. But you have it happening in medical schools, in law schools.
Pilots flying planes.
Pilots. You have it happening with Asian students at Harvard. not getting into Harvard because
Possible replacements for president?
yeah,
Yes.
all of those things. And the American people are starting to say, even amongst liberals, who may have a liberal point of view, we're not talking just conservative Christians here. All of a sudden, it's affecting their kids, the whole transgender agenda when it comes to girls' sports.
Right.
So what has happened is the full manifestation of this left-wing ideology has gone mainstream.
Yeah.
And the mainstream is saying, no,
Right.
I'm sorry. I'm not going to let that man who just claims to be a girl hurt my daughter
Right.
on the soccer field or the basketball court, whatever the case may be. And by the way, my son is more qualified for that job than this person over here. And I don't think it's right. They worked hard. My son has worked hard. I'm not going to put up with this anymore. So you have this open rebellion. And so, you watch commercials on TV at night. And Instagram, I watch some of the videos on Instagram. There are a lot of conservatives that are showing up on social media now saying, enough is enough of this DEI stuff. I've had it with that. And so you're having this a wave comes ashore, but then there's a kickback from it.
Yeah.
The undertow that they warn about. The undertow is underway in this country. And, I'm anxious to see how that manifests itself in this election, because I think the left has overplayed its hand.
Yes.
And I don't think America is ready for that agenda.
Well, and you said, who's this? Robbie
Starbuck.
Starbuck. He mentioned that other companies, Steve, may be watching what happened here to Tractor Supply and may feel safe in going down the same road. At the start, I would imagine it would only be companies whose main customer base is not woke, okay? Starbucks coffee might not backpedal on it because they probably do have a pretty woke customer base.
There are not only customer base, but there are certain companies that are run by people who buy into this. I remember when I was in Colorado Springs, I sang for a group, the Colorado Springs Chorale. It was a large choir. We did masterworks with the Philharmonic and everything, and someone had the chorale had put out a statement that said we support homosexual rights and all this kind of stuff. It was totally useless. Yeah, there were people in the chorale who were gay, but it didn't matter. I mean, I'll sing with them. It doesn't, But they put out this statement, and someone said, "Oh, you know what? Steve Jordahl works for Focus on the Family. I bet he has something to say about this." So he asked me, and I said, I even went as far as to say, because I prearranged this, if you're getting money from the Gill Foundation or other gay rights groups in Colorado Springs, I have somebody that will match those donations from a family-friendly thing. And the director, who's a man that I deeply, deeply respect, still do, said, no, we're doing this because we think it's right. And it was a kind of a shock to me, because it's not always just that the squeaky wheel, which HRC and all these gay rights groups, they scream and they make it sound like they're going to put you out of business if you don't obey them. They don't really have that much power. They have as much power as businesses are willing to give them, but there's not that many people behind them. But there are some true believers, and I think going back to the Ten Commandments discussion, we have some education to do in morality in this country. We have some ground to take back, and I'm glad that Tractor Supply did what they did. I think you're right about Starbucks and other companies. But, folks, you can't necessarily divest yourself of everything that you don't approve of morally.
Right.
So you might decide, you know what, if a company supports Planned Parenthood, I'm not going there. I'm with you. If a company supports the Human Rights Campaign or these, transgender agenda, I'm not going to shop there. You might have to. You can't divest if a company is going to say I'm giving money to the Democrat Party. You can't be pure 100%, you'll starve.
You got to pick your battles.
Pick your battles.
Right.
But there are certain battles worth picking, and I think Starbucks found one, and I think it's possible for principled Christians to find one, and that influence counts.
Yeah, it does. All right, good. Next story.
All right. Let's talk about the weather. They've been breaking records in California, heat records. Do you know that it hit 124 degrees in Palm Springs? That's an all-time high. Now, Palm Springs is known. It's in the inland high desert, and it's known for being. It can get hot. It's not that far away from Death Valley.
Right.
But 124 is their all-time high, and in fact, it hit 127 degrees in nearby Death Valley. I've been in 115-degree temperature, and I can't imagine it being a whole lot hot. That's hot.
I remember my wife and I lived in Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona, for almost 3 years, and it would be over 100 degrees for 30 days straight. Sometimes reaching 110, 112, whatever. And I can remember I owned a little Subaru hatchback, and the ignition was metal. Put your key in and turn it. And I could not crank that car. I could not crank it when it was in the summer. I would have to have a handkerchief because you have to hold it long enough for the car to turn over. And it was too hot. And so I can't imagine it being 124. This is an all-time high. Is it expected to continue for
they
several
say it'll
days?
be here for a while.
Well.
My daughter had started her family in Phoenix, and this is the first time I'd ever heard of this, but she had a van that you could start remotely. She's in the restaurant or whatever, and she can start the thing, let it cool down for a bit before you get your kids in that oven.
Yeah.
I now have one of those cars, and I tell you, it doesn't get near that hot here, but it's nice. It's nice to be able to start that car remotely and walk in.
Listen, it had vinyl seats in this car. It was the Subaru was a cheapie.
Yeah.
Okay, and in fact, it was the first car I had ever bought, and I could not get in with shorts because my legs would stick to that vinyl. And listen, 124 is, I can see where that would be a scorcher and a record. So,
all right, let's end here. Ed, if this job isn't working out for you and you think you need some new new business, I have a suggestion for you because Seattle is looking for a tree equity manager, a tree equity initiative manager, because, well, environmental racism. Black and brown and other minority companies, places don't have the right trees doesn't provide as much shade as they get in white neighborhoods, according to the people. So this is a 6-figure job for tree equity.
Tree equity. All right, so let me see if I understand what these folks are saying. And what a shocker up in Seattle. Okay,
I know.
A very, very, very liberal place. So the city of Seattle has hired a tree equity person.
They're looking for
it. So I'm guessing it can't be a white guy. Can't be a white male.
Probably won't work that way.
So what they are saying is,
and probably you can't have too many rings, as in be too old.
Yeah.
Tree rings.
Oh, too old. Yeah, I get
rings,
it. So they are saying that specific areas of Seattle have been the victims of racism, and that's demonstrated by not having enough trees, or is it the
lack of tree
type
canopies and green spaces in Black, Asian, and Latino majority communities is due to institutional racism?
Well, that's probably nonsense. I'm guessing. All of this seems to be nonsense anyway. The woke movement. I'm guessing that a lot of the concentration of poor people the majority of which may very well be people of color, are probably in parts of the city that are mostly concrete.
Could be.
I mean, they're not out in the suburbs, in other words. And so
as you're in your new position as tree equity manager, how are you going to fix that?
Well, first of all, I'm not moving to Seattle. If I could do it remotely, I might
be able to.
I might help. Well, let's tear down some tenement government housing and plant trees. How does that make
homeless people now?
Does that make sense?
You're making homeless people now. That's just wrong.
All right, folks. With that idiocy up in Seattle, we will finish out our show. You've been listening to Today's Issues, and there is more great programming directly ahead on American Family Radio. We hope you will tune in, and Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow.